Everybody's favorite subject. I've got a 2.0T here on a stand. In this video, I'm going to be talking about oil pumps. It's very difficult to lead someone through one of these repairs because there's a lot of different variables. At the dealership, whenever an oil consumption repair was done through warranty, the dealership only wanted you to replace the pistons under warranty. They would give you the gaskets, the oil, just to break the thing apart, put pistons in it, and put it back together. We would not replace the rod bearings, even though we had it apart. And they all got really the second generation pistons. There's 3 generations. The first was the worst. 2009 to 2011 had the pinholes. And if you don't know what I'm talking about the control ring on the oil control ring, the very bottom ring on the piston, the 3rd ring. That's the one that gets clogged up. It had pinholes, and then, so Audi was the only one that played with that design from 2009 to 2011. VW never messed with the pinholes. From 2012 on, they went to slots, and it was a lot more difficult for those to get clogged up, but they did get clogged up. And someone even just told me about a 2016 vehicle that's burning a quart every 250 miles. So the whole B8, B8.5, everything through 2016 can have serious issues. So under warranty, we were not putting the best pistons back in it. We were putting the ones that all the VW cars currently run. All the ones from 2012 to 2016. So maybe even some of the engines that I did oil consumption on are drinking oil again. Sorry, that's the way Audi did it. Get pissed at them. But they came out with the newest style piston, which has been around forever, the waffle ring style, and I'm not gonna sit here and show you all the examples. I'm just trying to get through this video. So basically, bare minimum for an oil consumption job, you have to do the timing kit. Bare minimum, you have to do the timing chain for the camshafts. And then behind that, you have a timing chain for the balance shafts. So this shaft right here is the exhaust shaft, and it's just weighted. And then this shaft right here is the intake side, and it runs the water pump on the back side of it. How many times have I seen balance shafts fail? Probably the same amount as the oil pumps I've seen fail. Less than 5 engines out of, I've probably visited at least 1,500 engines. I've done oil consumption on at least 1,000 engines. I've been doing this for over 11 years. Primarily this 2.0T, that's why I stick with it. Yes, I'd like to get into other stuff. I'd like to work on other stuff, whatever, but I'm just goating out on this thing, all right? And some people like to use my expertise personally, in person, and most people probably are just gonna benefit from a vast amount of knowledge that I'm giving out on the internet. So, bare minimum, you have to do this updated tensioner. This spiral type tensioner. If you don't have this tensioner that looks like this, it's gonna fail. You have to do the updated chain because it's gonna stretch and it's gonna skip and you're gonna bend valves. You have to do the pistons, obviously, for the oil consumption because, look, I've done piston rings recently and they didn't fix oil consumption. Plus, the piston skirts wear out because they've got a wear layer on them, and I'm just not gonna do this much work anymore and gamble on just rings. You can do that on your own time, but I've seen it fail, so I'm no longer ever gonna do on any engine just rings. I'm always gonna do piston assemblies with rings. Here soon, I'm gonna be trying to use the JE pistons, and I've bought a Total Seal ring cutter, and I'm gonna start cutting my own rings. But those aftermarket pistons require custom aftermarket rods. So I haven't even gotten into those yet, but I will here soon. So far, I'm just using Kolben Schmidt and OEM pistons. I prefer to use the OEM pistons because that's what I've got experience with. Even though they cost $300 more than the Kolben Schmidt, I've only put 3 sets of those in so far, and I've put hundreds of the OEM pistons in. So that brings me to this. We've got an oil pump assortment up here, 3 different pumps. Never use a Chinese pump. The last pump that I replaced was a Chinese pump, and it probably didn't last but a few thousand miles. It had an oil pressure light on it, and the pump was the issue. So you're gonna have to either get an OEM pump. This one costs $500. How do you say this? Borsihung, is that how you say it? I don't even know. And then behind that we have the Vaco. Is that how you say it? I don't know. But this one, right, 500. I'm doing this off the top of my head because I just recently looked these up. This is this one I remember is about 300, a little bit more after tax, and this one is like 450. So the OEM pump just comes like this. The Borsihung comes with a chain and a tensioner. And then the Vaco just comes like this. I was looking at these really closely because it's very interesting how, see, they grind. And I wouldn't even like this sticker. I'm gonna take it off right now if it will come off. I wouldn't like this sticker inside my engine because I have a feeling that there's a potential for it to come off and get clogged in the pickup tube, but that's just me. Tell me what you think. So I'm gonna peel that sticker off. The interesting thing is, it's almost like it's the same casting with the Audi and then the part numbers and stuff. You see how there's a part number here? There's the Audi sign right here. There's an Audi sign right there with VW. Look at this. It looks like they grind it off because it's the same casting. It looks like they grind it off right here, right here, right here. Looks like they grind it off right there. What do you think about that? Looks like the same casting. They grind it off right there so it no longer says Audi VW. I don't necessarily know if it's the same pump or not, but it could be. You know, Audi doesn't make their pumps. They're gonna sublet this out to someone, and then they're gonna have their name on it, and they're gonna jack the price up. Now the bottom doesn't look absolutely identical, but keep in mind, not all these pumps look identical either. There's a few different, like for instance, on some of these Audi pumps, this Audi symbol is a lot larger, but it's the same pump. But they look close enough. Let's just flip them over and look at the bottom real quick. That's got a 20, and then this one has an 8, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything. It still has this same symbol right here. What does that say? 8TG. This one says TC8. So that doesn't necessarily mean anything to me. What's this one look like? See, they ground that off. They ground that off on this one. And this one says 20, and that one says 20. So I don't know if these are all made in the same place. I doubt it, but it could be. Maybe they're all the same casting and they just... So this one says Vaco right here, but they could be doing that after the fact. Anyway, a pump is something that I have to present. If I'm doing this job, I have to say, well, do you want a pump? The cheapest option is like a little bit over $300 right here for this pump right here. You know, but you could go overboard. The pump would be something that I might suggest. You could go into replacing these balance shafts, but these balance shafts are, I'd have to double check the price, but I think it's pretty pricey. It's probably about $600 for the kit or something. Like I say, I have to double check. I can't remember off the top of my head. But before I would do the pump, before I would do the balance shafts, I would do a rebuilt cylinder head. This is a rebuilt cylinder head. It's brand new in there. Everything looks super clean. The biggest thing with the rebuilt cylinder head is they grind the valves, they put new valve stem seals on, new valve guides. They polish the cam whenever I give it to them. One of the other huge benefits is there's all kinds of carbon on this intake, the intake valves, and I should have grabbed a flashlight, but maybe I will. You get the idea. It's perfectly clean in there. Everything's brand new. It's as good as a brand new cylinder head. I'm going to give you a parts kit right here. It's from FCP Euro, and the parts kit after taxes costs about $4,100, and it's back ordered. But I've got a different video where I show you I have all these parts myself. I've been stocking up on all these parts. This timing kit with the balance shaft assembly is about $650. You know, you could, I've got another video where I show that this pulley locked up on me, and so replacing this pulley and then the idler pulley, that's another like 120 or something like that. This cylinder head, if I were to sell one after I get it rebuilt, it's you know, this is like worth $1,000 to me for a cylinder head. And I prefer to do it with core exchange because I have to spend the money on valves, the labor to the parts, the labor. You know, a lot of them have just bent valves from a timing chain issue, but I've started rebuilding every single cylinder head unless, you know, I won't say that you have to have excuse me. I won't say that you have to have a rebuilt cylinder head. I won't say that you have to have an oil pump. I won't say that you have to have balance shafts. I will say that you absolutely have to have, if I'm doing it, it's getting this whole chain kit. From now on, I'm doing not only the camshaft chain, but the balance shaft chain. Now this balance shaft chain is not near as important, but if you're a heavy foot driver, this thing is gonna stretch out too. This is what it looks like. I've measured this in a different video. This is what it looks like when everything's brand new. And this thing can stretch all the way out to where this plunger's fully extended. And eventually it can cause an oil pressure issue and chain noise. I'm just going off the top of my head here, but obviously it gets all new gaskets. Obviously it has to get a rear main engine seal, a head gasket, head bolts, rod bolts. I do rod bearings, unless the bearings look absolutely perfect, because the OEM bearings are better than aftermarket bearings. The OEM bearings are gonna run about $300. Aftermarket bearings, you can get them for about $60. So, but the OEM bearings are multi-layer bearings, and you know, like I said, you could go overboard. You could easily spend the kind of money that it could almost get to the point to where you're in new long block territory, but that's about 10 grand. So I don't know if you could push it that far, but you could if you had to go through the block and rebore the block and do all kinds of other stuff. So basically it's difficult to even go through all this stuff. If you have a screen that popped out of this camshaft bridge and it actually obstructed your intake cam and scored your cylinder head, then you pretty much have to have a cylinder head. I mean, you could put it back together the way it is. If it ran before, it'll run again, but you're gonna spend that much money and put it back together with scored intake cam, scored journal bearings in your cylinder head. I usually have to throw those cylinder heads away, and I've got brand new cylinder heads. I've got 2 brand new cylinder heads, and I've got like 3 rebuilt cylinder heads waiting on me. Well, not waiting on me, but in stock right now in my house. So the other thing is, you know, you got a turbo. The turbo wastegate could be loose. The linkage could be rattling. My dad's car just had a wastegate rattle linkage start rattling. And then you get the PO 299 underboost fault. That's what that is when the wastegate gets loose. So, you know, but that's something else. But, you know, if you're doing all this, you'd like to have a turbo. If you find out that it's about to give you that fault, you'd like to put a turbo on it. So what, you're gonna go with a Chinese turbo, or are you gonna spend money for a quality OEM turbo that's gonna cost about $1,000? So there's all kinds of things that you could spend money on, but ultimately, if I'm doing something for someone I'm gonna suggest first pistons. It has to have a timing, obviously pistons. It has to have a timing kit. Then I'm gonna suggest a cylinder head next. Then I'm gonna suggest an oil pump. And then if you wanna keep on spending money, you know, I'll do bearings, yeah. But I usually put bearings in, rod bearings. After that, we got here's a better look at the intake valves and how everything's brand new and clean on this rebuilt cylinder head. These things can get really gummed up, these valves. So it's nice to start fresh. And this is as good as a brand new cylinder head after it's completely gone through. This is a all aluminum Graf water pump. It's almost, or maybe it's a little over $200 now. It comes with a new coolant temp sensor. I've seen these go bad. I got to replace this little union here. And so far so good on these. It's nice to take this oil filter, oil cooler housing off and replace the gasket behind it, just for good measure. Of course, you're going to want to replace this rear outlet housing, the coolant outlet housing. I show in other videos how this thing gets so brittle that you can tear it apart with your fingers. You know, there's all kinds of things you could go through. So, you know, where do you stop? The engine mounts could be worn out. I could go on and on, but ultimately, you know, sometimes, what else? You could put new oil pressure switches on it, but those don't typically fail. Most of the time, if you have an oil pressure issue, it's gonna be an actual issue, even if it's intermittent. But in one video I showed just replacing these sensors just because I had them. Most people are gonna need to, and I need to do another video where I show you how to test your oil pressure. I've got a nice oil pressure tester since then. I used to always use the one at the shop, but what else? I think I covered most of it. You don't ever typically need to replace the camshafts unless there's scoring, but if it bent valves, you need to check these lobes to make sure that they're all lined up. And this cam adjuster in the front can wear out, but it's so rare I haven't really seen it yet. Don't ever use Chinese camshafts either. I tried it. The first one, after I installed it, had a timing fault. They sent me another one, and the second one was also bad. And by the time I got around to replacing the second one, these screws were coming out and falling apart, and it was scraping into my camshaft bridge. So if I would have let it go, it would have caused catastrophic damage. So really, the Chinese parts are horrible. I haven't seen this oil control valve fail yet. If you have an oil pressure issue, in my experience, it's not this. In my experience, most of it's related to probably this camshaft bridge. You need to, even if, you know, did I mention this yet? You need to replace this top cover if you don't want to deal with oil leaks. And you can clean up this bottom cover and reuse it, but it's nice to replace the bottom cover as well because you don't have to worry about oil leaks, and it comes with a new front main crankshaft seal. So you can see how things get really expensive, and a lot of times if someone wants to work with me, they can just get my email, naptowntuner@yahoo.com, and then they can get my phone number, and then I can talk to them over the phone about what they're trying to do. But really, I only work on 2009 to 2016 engines because that's just what I've been focusing on.